Good day, everybody, and welcome into the best damn pod in the land. I'm your host, Chad Stryker. No Dan today, flying solo. Just wanted to let you know that if you're looking forward to our Buckeye Fridays, we'll be back for this Friday with Terry T from College Football Stop. He'll be coming by. We're going to be doing our predictions for the two deep and talking about kind of what we see coming for 2025, any surprises we expect or would like to see, I guess is a good way to say it. And then another really fun announcement. I've spoken to Juck, a friend of the show from Juck on Bucks. And I know some of you guys like live shows because you want to come in, ask questions, and see what we think about things on the spot. So at the end of the month, we're going to be doing a live show with Juck and myself talking about the 2026 recruiting class. And if you want some 2027 questions as well, I typically go year by year. I don't usually do more than the year we're focused on. So Juck and I are going to be doing a recruiting show. He and I are both super into recruiting. Matter of fact, I like to go to local high school games, check out, who's playing where. Went to a couple Massillon ones last year to see some of the students. So it's always been a hobby of mine, even before we started the show. I always enjoyed recruiting. I always think it's fun, and it's cool to see those kids develop and become what you had hoped or what you thought they would be. So again, end of the month, I'll let you know a specific date and time so that you can join us, and we'll have some fun with that. And beyond that, a couple news and notes. I know everybody saw the Coach Key promotion. Listen, I tweeted this as soon as it happened. Don't read into it. This is just a way for Ohio State to pay him more, for him to get a title, a few of those other things, because other schools are trying to steal him. I don't know how much you know about Coach Key, but great recruiter, did a good job with our tight ends this year, and kids love him. Like, he's 29. The kids just think and I shouldn't say kids, the athletes love Coach Key. Like, if you talk to them about him, they really, really like him. So there's that. As far as the defensive coordinator search, I touch on this in some of our mailbag questions, which is really what today's show is. However, I do know that there's a lot of smoke around Matt Patricia. I want you guys to just kind of take a deep breath. I've been told he is a candidate, not the candidate. So yes, he's coming to town from what I've been able to discern. He is interviewing, but they are interviewing other people too. So I know that, some of you love it, some of you hate it. It depends on where you're from or what you think or whatever. Again, right now I would say he's a candidate, not the candidate, based off what I found out last night and early this morning. So take that for what it's worth, grain of salt, however you want to say it. But it's not money in the bank yet, as far as I'm concerned. So there you have that. All right. So first question I'm going to address, and thank you to Luke from one of our good friends. I appreciate the question, dude. So he from the tailgate, he asked what our thoughts on Ryan Day's extension in light of the uproar after the Michigan game. What roles are still up in the air as far as coaching hires? And so I promised him I'd answer that on the show. So thanks, Luke, from the tailgate. As far as I'm concerned, the Ryan Day hire makes a lot of sense. Or extension. So he, it's just one of those things where, of course, after the Michigan loss, everybody was in their feelings. Understandably so. Even myself, I was frustrated. And so kind of breaking this apart, I was not on the Ryan Day train, though. I know that Dan was and some others were, and a lot of people were really in their feels about it. And I said at that time, after that game, after I had a chance to cool down, Ryan Day does not have a coaching problem. He has a Michigan problem. I'll break that down another time, but I personally love that they extended Ryan Day. I think that Ross Bjork basically led into that or said that during the championship celebration that that was, and they wanted to have Ryan Day around a long time, I believe is what he said. but it makes sense. And there's kind of like what I would consider a 2-year clause here. Yes, he's signed through 2031, but it's kind of one of those things where I think could be out after 2 years. And the reason I mention that is, if he's cemented forever with his legacy now. Urban left after year 7, and the days of, Woody Hayes are gone. Tressel again, gosh, what was his 8 years, 9 years maybe. Meyer was 7. Day will be going into year 7. So, you know, just kind of one of those things. And then if you think about these names too, Paul Brown, Woody Hayes, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, and Ryan Day, rarefied air because they're all national championship coaches. So you win a natty, you're going to get rewarded. Now, a lot of people asked about the length of the extension, and I mentioned it already. Personally, I do not think Ryan Day will be here after the 2027 season. Just saying, just a gut feeling on the way college coaching goes, the way things move, and the way the game moves. But Ryan Day is also younger than all the other guys that I've mentioned, Urban and Tress and so on. So maybe he sticks around a little longer. Maybe he has a run more like Saban did. But my gut feeling is, 2027 might be his last year, but the buyout's huge. Maybe not. We'll have to see. Now for the hate after the Michigan loss. Listen, I don't like Michigan. I don't, but I love Ohio State. That loss sucked. I hated it a lot. But, I've been saying this since 2021. You can go back and look on my Twitter. I will take 100 times out of 100 winning a natty, even if we lost to Michigan, because what happened to Michigan? They went to the Little Sisters of the Poor ReliaQuest Bowl, and yeah, cool. You got they can say 13-10. I do not care. I'm only bringing this up because it was part of the question. I actually think it bothers them so much because a lot of us, I mean, we were angry about it. But right now, for me personally, some of my friends that are Michigan fans, like the way it bothers them that I don't care, I think it's kind of funny. So, all that said, I think Ryan Day does have to figure out what issues he has around the game. And I'll get into that another time. But really, I think the soft comment and some of the other things that happen externally impacted him in such a way that it caused him, I'll say, to change who he is philosophically as a play caller and a game manager. And all he really had to do was utilize the weapons on the outside. I also still question whether or not Will Howard was 100% that day. Anyways, but we also know that I think that a couple of those years there were external circumstances that impacted the outcome of that game. All right. So moving on to our next mailbag question. Luke, again, thanks for the question, buddy. Appreciate you. Comes from Cooper Bucks. Cooper, good friend of the show. Really good guy. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for the question. He wanted to know, and he basically phrased it as like he didn't want to be a downer, but wanted to know what, if any, concerns or area of concerns do I have going into the 2025 season? And like I said, Coop, not a downer. But as far as concerns go, I still circle this one for me. Now, other people have said, coaching and the Michigan game, so on and so forth. Right now, I'm still riding high on the Natty. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the Too Deep episode with Terry T on Friday. But for me, right now, it's still the tackle position. And you can say, we went out and got Anianwa for left tackle, and we brought in Daniels, and still it's the depth at tackle for me is a concern. So we saw it this year. So we lose, Jimmy Simmons, and Donnie Jackson basically saves the season by kicking out. We do have, I like our depth on the interior, but can we for sure say that Daniels is a can't miss day one starter at right tackle? I know he started at Minnesota. I know it. I got it. Before you come in the mentions, I got it. We have Ian Moore. You got Devontae Armstrong. Shabola maybe could kick out there permanently. I'm just not sure what we have behind, even really, I have a question mark at right tackle still. I think Ian Moore could have an amazing camp and end up being the starting right tackle. So lots of questions there for me. And I feel like there's more questions than answers. Carter Lowe's not going to be a factor this year. Just trust me, guys. It takes a while for linemen. And if anybody says Luke Montgomery to me, you're crazy. He's a guard or a center at this level and the next level. I know he played tackle in high school. Just trust me. I honestly continued to say up until probably the second Oregon game, I thought his best position might be long term at center because he's so mobile and the NFL loves centers that can pull. But he may end up being Donnie's replacement, so we'll go with that. But my answer, honestly, Coop, truly still the offensive line. We're really feeling the effects of big misses during the Fry era, and then we're outside of the Studwara era, but the last 3 years, that strategy of going nationally rather than trying to recruit locally, I think really has hurt us. And I personally would not be shocked if there was a young tackle in the portal in the spring window if Ohio State didn't maybe go out and get one more. It wouldn't surprise me a lick. And if I were Ohio State and there was somebody out there that was like that, now obviously Ani Anwa wanted some guarantees of starting, et cetera, et cetera. Or, because Daniels is only a sophomore, it's possible they could go out and look for a grad transfer tackle. I'm just spitballing on that, but that's my concern. The offensive line is my concern. Sayin is not Will Howard. He's not thick like Will Howard. I don't know that he can take a beating like Will Howard, and I don't, I'm not saying he's for sure the starter, but he seems to have the leg up. So, again, for me, all starts with the offensive line. Next up, hopefully that answers your question too, Coop. So thanks for the question. Next up, Coach Buckeye on Twitter. He asks, what direction would you see the offense going with Hartline taking over play calling, and how important will the new O-line coach play in the running game? So thanks for the question, Coach. Appreciate you, man. Always enjoy rapping with you on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. So for me, I don't think the offense is going to change that much. I personally believe that this is Ryan Day's offense. I don't think that, you're going to see a ton of change. What I would say, if you want to pigeonhole me to something, I think you might see a pass to run offense this year rather than a run to pass. And that's been the MO of Ryan Day in general, though. I'm not saying that there's going to be a lot change, but I also, we'll see. But again, I just think the offense, Chip Kelly coming in, he helped alleviate the pressure on Ryan Day to have to be fully involved in the offense all the time, which is why, there's so many rumors about him getting involved with the defense and Jim Knowles. So again, I don't see this as a ton of changes. And the other thing I would say is, and I mentioned this in our last show too, that, Urban Meyer had executive decision making at the, when he handed over play calling duties to Tom Herman and others. Like he could veto whatever they wanted to do. And I think Ryan Day will still do that. He wears a headset on the sideline for a reason, and I think it's really going to be up to Brian Hartline to, get in the game flow. And I think that he will. I think he learned from Chip. He had a headset on all season, and to say that he hasn't learned since, the experiment in 2023, I don't think that's true. Tyler Bowen coming in, to answer your Tyler Bowen question, it's interesting to me. And I'll say it's interesting because I think there's going to be a change when it comes to the run game a little bit, but not a lot of it. So Tyler Bowen's known for his outside zone. OSU is a stretch zone team, and they tried in the Michigan game and failed horribly to run inside zone at Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Like, that's what happened that game. And then there was a big switch going into the playoffs where they really started to depend on, what I would call pin and pull and gap schemes rather than zone. Ryan Day likes outside zone. I hate stretch to the boundary. You guys know this. We all do. And I think they went to the pin and pull in the gap so that they could use the tight ends and wide receivers for blocking to help a banged up offensive line. They schemed it up a little bit. I think you're going to have better tight ends this year. You have Max Clare coming in, Kazmarek in year 2 with Ohio State, and then Bennett Christian is back. And I wouldn't sleep at all on the three of them. I think that's a great combination. And honestly, Max Clare was Purdue's whole offense, so he's definitely a stud and can help in a lot of different ways. So that may be another mix-up. You see a little more throwing to the tight end, a la Cade Stover. The other thing I'm going to watch, and I want to watch carefully, is C.J. Donaldson and James Peoples are not necessarily burners. So Peoples is fast, but he's not Travion Henderson fast. He's more in the mold of Quinshon Judkins. And so that could lead to more inside zone rather than outside zone, just because, outside zone typically lends to more of your Trey type back. And it's just kind of where I'm at with it. I know that Tyler Bowen will have a good impact on everything, but the run game I do think changes a little bit this year, and I think you'll see probably some more, I guess, pistol back formations to give Peoples a chance to read the line. We'll see, but I have a lot of questions around that. I'll just be honest. I'm curious to see what they do. And it's a younger room besides Donaldson. So excited to see how that all shakes out. Let's see what we got next. Emily Gates, thoughts on the 2025 class and how they will contribute this season. And I followed up and I just asked her what specific players she might have in mind, and perhaps what, if there was somebody she was more interested in than others. So, Emily, thank you for the question. I guess I'm from I would call it the old school, where I never really count too much on freshmen. So to do a whole lot of anything, that's Coach Buckeye. Let's see here. Yeah, so thoughts on 2025 class. Firstly, I love the 2025 class. I'm a big fan of Bo Jackson, Isaiah West, Devin Sanchez, Fahim Delane. There's so many good players in this class. Ohio State, that's what they do. They go out and get good players. So you asked me about Alford. So Tarvis, TJ Alford, Fahim Delane, Zion Ziggy Grady, and Carter Lowe. So what I'll start kind of what I started to do in preparation for the show on Friday with Terry, but it's hard for me to put anybody on the field immediately as a freshman, except if your name is Jeremiah Smith. Dude was unreal last year. He came in and he's a grown man. He was ready for the NFL last year. And so what do I expect? Every year I kind of pick 2 or 3 dudes on each side of the ball. I'm like maybe 2.5 dudes that could or will find playing time just either out of necessity or they're just that good. And by playing time, I'm talking about like Grambling and some of these other lesser conference opponents that we could see. So number one on the defense for me, Fahim Delane. He's just that good defensively. I think he could push to be the starter with Lathan Ransom moving on, playing beside Caleb Downs, and it's a 3 safety system. So he's good in coverage. I genuinely believe that he could push for playing time. I'm not saying he's going to, but I think he could. Another one with Cody graduating and the transfer portal situation is Riley Pettyjohn. That while I love Arvell, I love Sonny, and I think Peyton Pierce is coming on. I think there's some room there. There's some room there for Riley Pettyjohn. I think TJ Alford is probably a year away. I really do. But, a lot can happen between January and spring practice and the fall, but he's one that I would keep my eye on. And if this is kind of 1A and 1B for me on the defensive line. And this is more of a depth thing and availability thing. I think Zion Ziggy Grady could push for playing time, much like Edric Houston, as well as Jarquez Carter. I think Jarquez Carter is another one of those guys. He's a Caden McDonald kind of cat, and I think he could find himself in the 2 deep if he plays well enough because of the Hero Canoe transfer. So hopefully that answers your question on defense, Emily. Offensively, this was so easy for me to reach out and pluck one. Bo Jackson. So Bo Jackson's going to end up being the 3rd string running back coming into the year. I think he has an even larger role than James Peoples did because he's just physically ready. Not that Peoples wasn't, but I think with Donaldson and Peoples kind of being 1A and 1B, in my opinion, much like Junkins and Henderson, I think you're going to see a large role for Bo Jackson, and there's probably even some reps in there for Isaiah West and or Turbo Rogers, depending on how they use them. But do not be surprised. I would not be shocked at all if Bo Jackson is 3rd on the team in carries by the end of the year. Another one, now this is going to depend on how things shake out in the spring, but Nate Roberts, tight end, I think there's a spot for a number 4 tight end. You lose Patrick Gerd to the transfer portal, so you have Bennett Christian, Claire, and Kazmarek. So I think there is a spot there, and Nate Roberts is similar to Max Claire, and I think more Jeremy Ruckert. I would put him more in the Jeremy Ruckert category. But, it's tough as a freshman as a tight end to get on the field, but if you're wanting me to like pick an outlier, that might be one. And one I kind of think is a stretch, but I still think could see early playing time, maybe 4 games, but to preserve a red shirt would be Quincy Porter. I think that there's a lot of depth to overcome there. You've got Tate and JJ and Ennis, and then you have Bryson Rogers and Mylan Graham, and you go on down the line. I do think he could see some playing time. I think he's that good, and I think he's physically at a place where he could play. So those are my 3, Bo Jackson, Quincy Porter, Nate Roberts. So, I hope that answers your question, Emily. The 2025 class, though, loaded studs. You asked me about Carter Lowe, and I brought it up earlier. The offensive line it's so hard as a freshman to find, your way to the field. Orlando Pace was a, freak. Paris Johnson, same, like Paris Johnson kicked inside though. So, there's just, and practice, tackle and guard a little bit. And I just think that it's tough. It's tough as a freshman. I won't rule it out, but, because we were all ready to put David Sanders on the offensive line as an offensive tackle as a true freshman and roll with it. So, yeah, I think the class rounded out well. Obviously there were some misses, but you are where you are with it. And I think that some of that gets addressed via the transfer portal. One thing I will say about this year that's a little different than last year. So last year they went out and they added Quinshawn Junkins and they added Caleb Downs and they added some of those splash players, what I would call the nice to haves. This year they had big needs. They had needs on the offensive line and they had to use the majority of their cash to get those guys. So that I think that's the difference between last year and this year is, last year you had money to burn to go get those elite skill players. And I didn't feel like they had that this year. And so that because they had to address the offensive line, it was a must. So they had to be big players in that area. Well, guys, that's going to do it for me today. Appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for tagging along. Again, Friday, Terry T will be here doing the 2 deep and predictions. And then again, that last week of the month, Jock and I will be going live and doing a recruiting episode. So appreciate you guys. You guys have a good week. Thanks for all the things and questions and all the fun stuff we do on Twitter. And as always, stay safe. Go Bucks.